So let's talk about the strategy, because a lot of the questions I saw coming in were, is it safe for me to do a fast? So for most people, the simplest way to start a fast is right here. It's the 16-8. And again, this is an intermittent fasting strategy. It is not a caloric restriction. So it's just basically, it's not eating for 16 hours and then eating for a period of time within your day, that 8-hour window you can consume all of your meals. And so that it's the 16 hours. This gives your gut rest. Your gut rests for 16 hours, and that happens every 24-hour cycle. And so that type of intermittent fasting is what leads to these types of benefits that I've been talking about. And again, this is a very easy strategy. Now, you may be low blood sugar. You may have hypoglycemia. You may be a diabetic. You may be on insulin. This is where you've got to work with a professional to make sure that you're not tanking your blood sugar because you took your insulin and now you're hypoglycemic, and then you have to chase that hypoglycemia with sugar or some type of sweet, etc. So this is where you have to really strategically work with a good healthcare provider to get you set up to be able to do this successfully. If you just have diabetes or hypoglycemic, not type 1 diabetics where you need insulin, this is still relatively safe. Meaning that if you don't eat for 16 hours, your body is going to be able to handle that. Now, sometimes what happens to people who have hypoglycemia is they get irritability. They'll get things like headaches and those types of symptoms. So if that's happening when you're trying to fast, it's okay to start out and work your way into it. So instead of going 16-8, you might do 14-10. Again, it's most people have a fasting structure in today's modern world of 8 to 10 hours, meaning your gut only ever gets 8 to 10 hours of rest. And so the entire rest of the time it's being asked to work and to work hard. And so you're trying to expand the gut's rest from 8 to 10 hours up to 14, then up to 16, then potentially up to 20. And this can be done every day. A 16-8 or a 24, either one of those can be done. They can be implemented every day. Again, remember, it's not calorie restriction. It's time restriction feeding. So a lot of our benefits for fasting come by applying these on a daily basis. I personally 16-8 pretty much every day of the week. It's just part of the way I live. And I would encourage any of you to try to work yourself into this realm. It's just, generally speaking, the science on it is overwhelming. The science and the benefits, especially for your gut, is overwhelming, especially if you've got a history of gluten sensitivity. Now, where you may want to consider longer fasts, like a 1 day or a 3 day, 1 day is not a big leap. That's just, you're taking 24-hour periods. It's just 4 extra hours in that case. But if you're getting into that 3-day fast where you're trying to break past that 2 days, so again, remember that diagram that I showed you a minute ago where there's some additional benefit to the improvement in the healing of your GI tract in that longer fasting time frame window. This right here, a lot of people will notice that when they get into fasting, they'll go 24 hours, and that's the hardest point. And once they get past 24 hours, day 2 is not a big deal. Day 3 is not a big deal. And some people start to feel a little bit sluggish or tired at the end of day 3. And that's your body telling you it's time to get something in it. And some people can keep going. There are some people that can do, I've seen cases where people, especially when they were overweight, where they could pull 7-day fast without even batting an eye. A very, very simple thing for them to do. But again, fasting is also, there's not like a magic one-size-fits-all strategy that absolutely everyone should do. So if you find yourself on day 2 lethargic and tired and losing your ability to function, it's time to break the fast. This is not something that you should force on yourself. Fast for the time frame that you can, let your body communicate to you, listen to your body. And if you're getting beyond 3 days, look, I don't recommend trying to do something beyond 3 days without working with an expert, without working with somebody who's experienced and an expert in fasting, because there are strategies when you go longer, especially when you get into that 7-day time frame when you're fasting. There's strategies for food reimplementation, and if you just start eating a big meal after a 7-day fast, you could actually hurt your gut. So again, there are definitely strategies that you want to understand if you're taking this beyond 7 days and beyond. But generally speaking, up to a 3-day fast is very safe and extremely beneficial. And where I find it the most beneficial for folks is in the combating of autoimmune disease. So if you've ever been labeled with an autoimmune diagnosis, whether it's Hashimoto's or Graves', or whether it's Addison's disease or any of the rheumatological autoimmune diseases or skin autoimmune conditions like eczema and psoriasis, like fasting works really, really well for autoimmune disease. And one of the reasons why is the vast majority of autoimmune triggers for most people is actually in their diet. It's either the food that they're eating or it's the chemicals in the food that they're eating. And so when you fast, you remove those triggers and your body starts to say, hallelujah, we can start healing again. And that's where some of that early benefit can come from fasting. So if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and you really aren't sure whether or not you have food allergies or gluten sensitivity and you don't want to do some tests to determine those, fast first. If you fast and feel better, remarkably better, then that should be your body's cue. That should be your cue to understand that your body feels better because you're not eating things that your body was viewing as a poison that were damaging you. So fasting is a great way to begin that process of understanding whether or not food is going to impact your autoimmune disease. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.